Hi, I'm Ruben Saltzman with Structure Tech Home Inspections, and it's time for another photo series on new construction inspections, stuff we found while inspecting brand new houses. Now, before I get into showing you all of these photos, I need to start this off by saying this is not a knock against builders, the people out there who are actually swinging the hammers, against any tradespeople. This isn't a knock against building officials who are coming out to inspect all of this work. This isn't a knock against anybody. The point of sharing all these photos is to tell you that there is a ton of value in having new construction houses inspected privately. There's a ton of stuff that we find. People are human, people make mistakes, stuff gets forgotten about, and there's a lot of value in having homes inspected privately. That's my message today. I'm not knocking anyone, so don't feel bad if this was your work. Everybody makes mistakes, we get it. So let's get into it. These are all photos that we've taken, people on my team have taken pretty much in the last 8 months or so. There's a few of these where it's got some cold weather stuff. The vast majority of these photos we took over the past couple of months during the summer, but there's a few photos showing some snow on the ground too. And it's all stuff that we found after the house has been completed, after the certificate of occupancy has been issued, the builder is done, there's no more work being done, no more permits. That's when all these inspections take place. So let's get into them here. This first one shows a leaking dishwasher. We run every dishwasher at the beginning of the inspection, and this one, it was not obvious that it was leaking below the dishwasher, but then when we got downstairs to the finished basement, we saw water coming out onto a light fixture, and we scanned it with our infrared camera, and we found water all over the ceiling. We find a surprising amount of leaks at dishwashers and other drains, sink drains and kitchen sink drains and bathtub drains. Find a lot of leaks at all of these different areas. Those photos are pretty boring. It's always a little drip of water here and there, but we find a lot of them. Next, you're seeing studs that were cut too short. Now what's going to happen over time? It's going to settle, and you're going to have some wicked settlement cracks in the finished surfaces above. Next, you've got an overnotch joist. Well, you've got a bunch of overnotch joists, or overboard, I guess we should say. The holes are too big. Now I know what you're thinking. This is not traditional lumber. The rules don't apply. You're right. The rules in the code book aren't the same for manufactured products. For a manufactured product, you got to go to the manufacturer's installation instructions and go with what they say is allowable for putting holes in their floor joists. In this particular case, the manufacturer has the same rules. They say you cannot put a hole more than 1/3 the joist depth, which is the exact same thing we have for traditional lumber. So for an LSL, just look at the traditional rules. That's what applies here. These holes are way too big. Next, you're looking at basement water intrusion on a new construction house. There was some hairline settlement cracks in the foundation wall. There was very poor water management at the outside where you had no gutters. Builders never put gutters on houses here in Minnesota. So all the rainwater comes right down to the edge of the house. And then you've got a sump pump discharging right out the side of the house, and the area just gets flooded with water. What else is supposed to happen? So we always love to see gutters added on, and some pumps need big, long discharge hoses to get that water away. Next, you're looking at a stairway that is improperly constructed. The height on stairway risers cannot vary more than 3/8 of an inch, and that's for the entire rise of the stairway. The tallest cannot be more than 3/8 inch different from the shortest riser height. Now this one, we don't even need to put a tape measure up to this, because this is blatantly obvious, I think. What's the fix? The stairway needs to be rebuilt. This is not a simple fix. Next, you're looking at a partially caulked toilet. Now I know you're thinking, who cares? And some people even argue against caulking toilets at the floor, but the code requirement is that the toilet be sealed at the floor, and I think it's a good requirement. The reason for this is that if it's not sealed at the floor, you're going to have unpleasant how should we say, bathroom liquids that could leak down the side of the toilet, and then through capillary action, they get sucked underneath the toilet, between the toilet and the floor, to what we consider a concealed fouling area that can never be cleaned. And then what happens? It gets funky, gets nasty. So toilets always need to be caulked at the floor all the way around. Now, well, you know what? That's another topic. Bottom line is, this is an incomplete job, needs to be finished. Next, you're looking at missing paint at the cut edges of the siding. Very common issue. When you have composite siding like this, any of the cut edges need to be painted to help prevent water from seeping into that siding and causing premature deterioration. While we're on the topic of siding, we've got a whole area on this house where they forgot to caulk. We find voids in caulk and missing caulk areas all over the place on houses, but on this particular one, they just completely missed a whole row of siding intersections where it comes in contact with the trim. So that needs to be addressed. This next photo is showing you overdriven nails. Not that big of a deal. Typically a dab of caulk in every one of these nail holes is going to be enough to take care of it. Next, you're looking at a disconnected bath fan duct in the attic. Now, left like this for many years, you're going to have tons of warm, humid air leaking up into the attic space. In the winter, it'll condense on the roof sheathing, turning into frost, turns it into a winter wonderland. And when all that frost melts, it's going to get the sheathing all wet, and then water's going to drip down, and you can have wet ceilings, and you can end up with mold issues in the attic. You can end up with ice dams on your roof because of this too. Lots of bad stuff can happen. It's not that big of a deal to fix it. Someone just needs to get up there and fix it. This is why it's so important to have someone get up there and look at it. While we're on the topic of attics, it's one of the most important parts of the home inspection. Make sure that your home inspector can always get up in the attic. New construction especially. Nobody's been up there to check and make sure that the right amount of insulation was installed. There is no such thing as an attic insulation inspection. Nobody goes up there to look at the work. So make sure you got your home inspector getting up there. If the builder says, oh, we sealed the attic access panel, you know what? The code says that those attic access panels are supposed to be weather stripped. Not sealed, weather stripped. So someone can actually get up there and inspect the work. That's what the code says. So they're not supposed to be sealed. The home inspector should always get up there. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox, show you some missing insulation. Now, I love this photo. We've got tons and tons of photos of insufficient attic insulation, but what's unusual about this one is that the depth markers that are installed by the insulation contractor actually show insufficient insulation. The insulation depth here is about 10 inches. It's supposed to be a little more than 16 inches. I think it's like 16 and a half inches or so is what they were supposed to install. Now, usually what they do is the insulation installers will put those depth markers in the attic all over the place. They're supposed to face the attic opening, and then they mound up the insulation where they put the markers to make sure that the required depth always looks good, and then the insulation typically tapers away throughout the rest of the attic. But in this case, they didn't even do that. So this is a more unusual photo. Same thing with this one, same attic. Must have been, here's a different attic. We didn't even need the depth markers. What you're looking at is the bottom, you can almost see the bottom cord of the truss. We're in the crotch of the truss here, right at the bottom. And at that bottom cord of the truss, it's gonna be 3.5 inches thick. It's a 2x4. And you can almost see the top of that 2x4. So the insulation cannot be more than about 6 inches deep at this location. And it was this way for a lot of the attic. Here's another attic that we could not access. There was no access to this one. It was a sport court, but we did use our infrared camera to scan the ceiling, and it proved that there was no insulation at the ceiling of the sport court whatsoever. Not the first time we've seen this. We've seen this on numerous sport courts where the insulation contractor never got up there to add the insulation. I don't know what it is about sport courts that makes it where people forget to get up there, but in this infrared image, as you're seeing, the hottest points of the ceiling are the spaces in between the framing members. When the framing members are the coolest areas on a summer day, it means that the framing is acting like insulation. Therefore, there's no insulation. That's what this is telling us here. This is a pretty uncommon electrical goof. It looks like somebody had wired in a box and they just forgot to come in and finish the work. Not a common electrical issue, but still, this is brand new construction. It was all approved. A very common thing we find with new construction inspections is the panel being recessed too far into the wall. When you have combustible construction, which means a wood-framed house, the panel needs to be installed flush with the surface of the wall. It can't be installed a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch behind the wall surface. It needs to be completely flush. This is set way back, needs to be fixed. Very common defect for new construction. On this next one, the neutral wires are run in an improper location. They're not supposed to run in between the main breaker and the rest of the breakers where you have exposed, energized bus bars. They need to run around. I know it's a nice shortcut, but it's not okay to do this. They need to go over it or more likely under it and around. They need to take the long way home. Next, you're looking at a frost-free faucet that's improperly installed. It's back-pitched, and the problem with this is that when the water is shut off, water is going to sit inside of that big long stem that goes inside the wall. And you've got a good potential for that water to freeze and to burst that pipe. Now, if it does burst the pipe, the water is going to be shut off. So it's not like you're gonna have water spraying out all over the house. But then come springtime, when the homeowner turns that faucet on for the first time, water is gonna come out, they're gonna be outside and they'll think that it's working fine, but they will also have water leaking out of that split that has formed, and it's going to be dumping inside of their wall. And when they're all done doing their gardening and they come inside, you're going to find a big old mess. That's why this installation is a problem. It's not us being nitpicky saying, oh, it should pitch this way, da da da. No, this actually matters. Next, you're looking at a gas leak. I don't know how this happens with new construction. Everything is supposed to be pressure tested. Don't ask me how. But we do find gas leaks at new construction inspections. Next, you're looking at a sensor for a garage door opener that's installed too high. The sensors need to be installed within 6 inches of the floor. And the reason is that as that door is closing, the force exerted, the downward force, gets increased exponentially during the last 6 inches or so of travel. And that's why the manufacturers require the sensors to be installed right near the ground. On this next one, to the untrained eye, you may not see anything wrong, but what's going on here is this is a furnace intake and exhaust. It's a concentric vent terminal, and it's missing the cap. And without a cap installed there, it means that you're gonna end up having rainwater dumping down the air intake for the furnace. Now, I'm not gonna get into all the details of why that's bad news, but just have to take my word for it. It's bad news. We need to have the proper vent terminal installed here so rain doesn't get in. These next photos are showing you missing shingles. When shingles are installed in cold weather, you got the potential for the shingles to not seal down to each other, and they're much more prone to wind damage. So cold weather installations, we're really looking out for wind damage and shingles blowing off. We're looking for torn shingles too. On this roof, there is no flashing at the plumbing vent. You are going to have water leaking into this opening. Someone needs to flash that vent ASAP. On the topic of missing flashing, here's one where they completely missed the step flashing at the sidewall. If you look carefully at the upper left portion of that, you can actually see there's exposed framing. Water is going to get in here. This needs to be fixed. Another thing we frequently see is test caps still in place on the drain, waste, and vent system. When the drain, waste, and vent system is initially installed, they need to cap off all the plumbing vents at the roof and then pressurize the system to make sure that there's no leaks. And then when they're all done, someone needs to go back and remove the caps. If the cap isn't removed, you might as well not even have a plumbing vent. It's not going to do its job. And side note, if you ever see plumbing vents, we frequently see plumbing vents where the vent terminates, instead of just a 90-degree terminal, it's going to have a 45-degree terminal. That's because someone went up there and they cut the pipe at a 45, and that way you can actually tell from the ground that there is no plumbing vent cap present. You know that the vent cap has been removed, or if it was a plug, you can see from the ground, we're good to go. This next photo is showing missing nails at joist hangers. This will surely be a forever defect at new construction and existing construction. Every nail hole needs a nail. Next, you're looking at a gap at a toe kick heat register. This is an extremely common defect. I find this wrong way more than we find it right. And the issue is that ductwork needs to be installed flush with the face of the cabinet. And finally, what you're looking at here is an air exchanger. It's either a heat recovery ventilator, an HRV, or an energy recovery ventilator, an ERV. It's one of those two. It's some type of device that brings air into the house and brings air out of the house to help make sure that we've got fresh air. The air's not getting stale. It's going to circulate the air in the house. And the air leaving needs to be equal to the air coming back into the house. When it's initially installed, it all needs to be balanced. And if it's not, you're going to end up with indoor air quality issues. If we have too much air that's leaving the house, it means that outdoor air needs to get sucked in through all of these undesirable openings, and we're going to pay an energy penalty. If we have too much air coming into the house, our house is going to be pressurized, and we're going to have indoor air trying to leak out of the house in all of these undesirable areas. And I mean, I've seen this happen where you've got this unbalanced, and you go to the windows and the doors in the wintertime, and you've got copious amounts of frost accumulated around all of them. It looks nasty. You can barely open your doors. You forget about opening up your windows in the winter. Now, I mean, I don't know why you'd want to anyway, but it leads to all of these indoor air quality issues. And it's all about this simple little thing about not having your air exchanger balanced when it's first installed. And to do that, well, I'm not going to get into the specifics, but the reason we know it wasn't done here is that there's a balancing damper, and once they figure out where that damper needs to be, they put a screw in there, they lock it in place, and now the system is balanced. If there's no screw, the system was never balanced. Simple as that. So that's enough for today. This video is way longer than I meant to make it, but we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. The message here is that if you're buying a new construction house, be sure to get the home inspection. Don't skip it. Don't listen to people telling you it's new, it's perfect. There's no such thing. New means new. New does not mean perfect. If you know of anyone buying a house, friends, family, whatever, please share this video with them. Tell them about the importance of getting new houses inspected. Okay, I'm Ruben Saltzman with Structure Tech Home Inspections. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.